Okay, so you're here because you want to get smart fast, and you don't have a lot of time, right?
That's right. And that's something we all struggle with, right? Time, it's the one thing we can never get more of.
I mean, think about it. The average lifespan is like, what, 72 years?
Yeah, around there. And that's only like 3,700 weeks.
And if you're 30, well, that means you've already lived through about 1,500 of those weeks.
Kind of a crazy thought when you put it like that. It really highlights how important it is to make the most of our time right. Avoid those regrets later on in life.
Yeah, all those I wish I had moments.
Hmm.
Like, I wish I'd followed my passions. I wish I hadn't been so lazy. I wish I had spent more time with family.
Right? Or I wish I had taken better care of my health. I wish I hadn't stayed in that dead end job. Or I wish I had traveled more when I was younger.
I wish I had just enjoyed life more. So you've brought some super insightful material that deals with exactly that, how to beat laziness and get more done.
Yeah, and it's not just about being busy, it's about accomplishing things that really matter to you.
I like that. So these sources, they go deep into the mindset you need to ditch laziness, and then they give you a whole bunch of practical tips and techniques to actually get stuff done.
And we're going to break it all down into two main parts. First, we'll dive into the mindset you need to develop, and then we'll get into some actionable strategies.
Sounds good to me. Let's get into it.
Okay, so before we jump into the details, I'm curious, how aware are you of your daily actions and how they might affect your future?
That's a great question, and that's really what this deep dive is all about. We want to help you become more aware so you can stop being lazy and start doing the things you actually want to do in life.
I like it.
Okay, so let's unpack the mindset part. One of the biggest things these sources stress is taking full responsibility for your life and for your actions. It can be tough to admit, but a lot of times we're pointing fingers at others when the problem is really us. And the sources are really direct about this. Laziness, unhappiness, procrastination, it all comes down to our choices and our actions. Absolutely. And you know that whole thing about blaming other people, it might make you feel a little better in the moment, but it never actually solves anything. It actually makes things worse because you're basically saying that you can't do anything about it.
Right, it's like saying, I'm just a victim and there's nothing I can do.
Exactly. And I'm thinking about a classic example like when people say they don't have time to exercise, they blame their job, their family, whatever. But all that blaming doesn't magically create an extra hour in the day. You always have a choice.
So true. We always have more control than we think. And it's not just about the present moment, right? These sources also talk about how we deal with our past. It's so easy to get hung up on past mistakes or be afraid of making new ones.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But the key takeaway is learn from those mistakes and move on. As one of the sources puts it, if you're not moving forward, you're making a second mistake by staying stuck.
I like that. It's like the mistake itself is one thing, but dwelling on it and letting it hold you back, that's a whole other problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And there's this great concept from the Stoic philosopher Epictetus about sticking to your business. It basically means don't waste your energy on things that don't really affect you, things you can't control.
Yeah.
Focus on what you can control, which is your thoughts and your actions.
So true. And you know, that ties into what the sources were saying about self-reliance. You can't wait around for others to solve your problems or make things happen for you.
It reminds me of that story about the farmer and the sparrow. So the sparrow's chicks are worried about the wheat harvest coming up. The farmer first says he'll get his sons to do it. Then he says he'll hire workers. But each time the sparrow's like, don't worry, he's relying on someone else. Nothing's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But then the farmer says he's going to harvest the wheat himself. And the sparrow's like, okay, time to go. He's taking responsibility now. Things are about to change.
That's such a great illustration of the difference between passively waiting and actually taking charge. So think about it. Where in your own life are you waiting for someone else to step up instead of taking action yourself?
That's a great question. It makes you think, doesn't it? So the sources then talk about how people generally fall into three groups. There are those who never even get started. Then there are those who give up as soon as things get tough. And then there's that tiny percentage, like the 1% who actually persevere and succeed.
I mean, it's kind of a harsh truth, but it's so important. If you want to achieve something meaningful, you've got to be willing to stick with it, even when it gets hard.
It's like a marathon,
Right.
right? You don't win by quitting halfway through. So the takeaway here is focus on your mindset. Focus on your efforts. Those are the things you can control. And stop worrying about what other people think. You can't control that.
I agree.
Okay, so the next big mindset shift is all about getting out of your comfort zone. It's cozy in there, right?
Yeah.
But that's where laziness thrives.
It's so easy to get stuck in a rut, doing the same things day after day, even when they're not really fulfilling.
And you know what? Even though it feels good in the moment, you often end up feeling kind of bad later on. Like you wasted all that time on stuff that didn't really matter.
Yeah, it's that feeling of, I could have been doing something so much more productive with my time.
Exactly. And you rarely hear people say, man, I really regret stepping outside my comfort zone.
Never. Trying new things, even if they're a little scary at first, that's where growth happens.
And one of the sources have this great tip. When you're trying something new, keep it simple. Don't overthink it.
Right. Don't get bogged down in the details. Just take action.
And I think Jeff Bezos said it best. Most decisions should probably be made with somewhere around 70% of the information you wish you had. If you wait for 90%, in most cases, you're probably being slow. You've got to be willing to act, even with a little bit of uncertainty.
That's such a great quote. So many people get stuck in that analysis paralysis, trying to get every single detail perfect before they even start.
Okay, moving on. The next mindset shift is all about finding the right things to work on. It sounds obvious, but you're always going to struggle with laziness if you don't genuinely care about what you're doing.
Yeah, you can only force yourself to do so many things you hate before you just burn out, right? If your work is just this repetitive, soul-crushing grind, it's almost impossible to find real motivation.
And the sources really caution against just blindly following what other people think you should be doing.
Yeah.
You know, like that classic story of someone who always wanted to be a painter but ended up becoming an accountant because their parents thought it was more practical.
So true. It's like your soul is slowly dying a little bit every day.
The sources introduce this concept of work is happiness, and I love that. It basically means when you find work that aligns with your passions, work becomes something you actually enjoy doing. It doesn't feel like a chore.
And that's where the laziness just naturally disappears.
Yeah, you don't need to force yourself to do something you love. So if you find yourself consistently dreading going to work, maybe it's time to start looking for a way out. And of course, working on the right things doesn't mean it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows. It's going to be hard work.
Right. You're still going to face challenges and setbacks. You still need to give it your all.
And they use the story of Vincent van Gogh to illustrate that point. I mean, he had so much passion for his art. He dedicated his life to it, but he struggled financially and his life was really difficult. So just because you're working on something you love doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it's so much more fulfilling in the long run.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that we only have so much energy each day. You can't do everything, so you have to prioritize.
Yeah, that's where that concept of attract, not chase comes in. Focus on your own growth, your own skills, and the right opportunities will start to come to you.
It's like you become this magnet for things that align with your passions.
And one last thing on this point, and this is a direct quote from one of the sources. You are great. Stop self-doubt.
Love it.
Okay, the next mindset to ditch, and this is a tricky one, is perfectionism. At least the kind of perfectionism that gets in your way.
Oh, yeah. I struggle with this one for sure.
So obviously there are times when perfectionism is absolutely necessary, like if you're a surgeon or an engineer building a bridge. But then there are times when it's completely unnecessary, like if you're mowing your lawn. No one's going to notice if every blade of grass is perfectly aligned.
Exactly.
And the sources warn about how laziness can sometimes disguise itself as perfectionism. You never start because you're waiting for everything to be just right.
It's like that saying, perfect is the enemy of good. You get so caught up in the details that you never actually ship anything.
And one of the sources brought up a really interesting point about reversible and irreversible decisions. You know, if it's a decision that can easily be undone, just make it and move on. But if it's a decision with big long-term consequences, then take your time and think it through.
That's such a great framework. It helps you prioritize and avoid getting stuck on the little things.
So the takeaway here is, for those everyday tasks that can be easily undone, done is better than perfect.
I like that.
And speaking of not settling, the next mindset is don't be mediocre.
Ooh, a powerful one.
The sources present mediocrity as a choice, not as something that just happens to you. It's the result of all these tiny decisions we make every day. And it's the opposite of greatness.
Greatness requires effort, struggle, even failure. But most people, like a huge majority, end up settling for less.
99%, the sources say. And they say that a lot of it comes from being surrounded by other mediocre people who aren't really striving for anything.
It's easy to get caught up in that kind of environment. It can really limit your thinking.
It makes me think about all those big dreams we had as kids before the world told us to be realistic.
Yeah, how many of us are actually living those dreams?
So the message is, think big. Even if you fail, at least you tried. And if there's something in your life you don't like, your job, your relationships, your mindset, change it.
Yes, change it. Greatness is definitely harder, but it's so much more rewarding. Don't settle for a life of quiet desperation.
All right, let's tackle another myth,
Hmm.
multitasking. It might feel like you're getting more done, but you're actually less efficient and more prone to making mistakes.
And the sources use a really powerful example, the NASA Mars Climate Orbiter mission. This was a multi-million-dollar project that failed because of a simple unit conversion error. And guess what? Multitasking was a contributing factor.
It's like your brain is trying to juggle too many things at once and it just drops the ball. So what can we do about it? The sources give 3 key tips. First, consciously avoid switching between tasks. Second, remove any distractions from your environment.
So, like, put your phone on silent, close your email tab, find a quiet space to work.
Exactly. And third, turn off all those unnecessary notifications. You don't need to be alerted every time someone likes your Instagram post.
So true. It's all about focusing on one thing at a time and giving it your full attention.
And they even recommend taking short naps to recharge your mental energy.
Naps are amazing.
Right. And the last thing on this point, be super clear about your most important tasks and eliminate anything that's not truly essential.
Prioritize, prioritize, prioritize.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, next up, routines. If you want to be productive and consistent, you need a solid daily routine.
It's so easy to just drift through your day reacting to whatever comes up, but that's not a recipe for success.
Right. The small actions you take every day, they shape your future.
And routines help you stay focused and avoid decision fatigue.
Exactly. You don't want to waste your mental energy deciding what to do next. And the sources actually share Leo Tolstoy's daily routine as an example. He was super disciplined. He'd wake up at 5 a.m., go for a walk, then write for several hours. Then he'd take a nap, isolate himself to work, and have an early bedtime.
Wow, that's dedication.
Right. Now, you don't have to follow his exact routine, but the point is, figure out what works best for you and stick to it.
And don't just choose the easy option. Think about what will benefit your future self.
And they also recommend taking 5 to 10 minutes each day to just sit alone with your thoughts. There's a great quote from Blaise Pascal that says, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
So true. We're constantly bombarded with distractions.
Yeah, and they compare distractions to the Trojan horse, seemingly small and harmless at first, but they sneak in and wreak havoc on your focus and productivity.
And they're everywhere.
So what can you do? Delete those apps that suck up your time, turn off notifications, and create a workspace free of distractions.
It's all about creating an environment that supports your goals.
Okay, next up is a big one. Learning to say no. It's so important for protecting your time and energy.
It's so easy to get caught up in people-pleasing and overcommitting ourselves.
But if you say yes to everything, you end up feeling overwhelmed and stretched too thin.
And you lose sight of your own goals.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So be polite but firm when you need to say no. And remember this quote from Seneca, if one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable.
That's so powerful. It's about knowing your direction, your priorities, and then saying no to anything that doesn't align with them.
Okay, here's something you might not expect. Don't work 24/7.
Wait, what? We're talking about productivity, and you're telling us not to work all the time.
Yeah, and it's not about being lazy. It's about working smarter and not harder.
Okay, I'm listening.
The goal is to get more done in less time so you can have a more balanced and fulfilling life.
Right, because burning yourself out doesn't help anyone.
Exactly. And constantly working can actually stifle your creativity and productivity.
So it's counterproductive.
It is. And sometimes that whole busyness thing is just a way to avoid the really important tasks. You know, the hard ones that we tend to procrastinate on.
Ooh, yeah, I know those tasks well.
So the sources encourage us to focus on output, not just hours worked. And they remind us that life is short. We don't want to reach the end and regret spending all our time working.
It's all about finding that balance, right?
Exactly. And the sources talk about the concept of less is more, prioritizing those high-value tasks that will give you the biggest impact. There's a great quote from Stephen Covey that says, if the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step we take just gets us to the wrong place faster.
So true. It's not just about working hard, it's about working on the right things.
Okay, another important mindset shift is this. Don't wait.
Don't wait for what?
Don't wait for the perfect time, the perfect conditions, or the perfect moment of inspiration. It rarely comes.
So just start.
Exactly. Action beats inaction every single time. And don't confuse laziness with patience. Patience is for waiting for results, not for delaying action.
I like that distinction.
They use the analogy of the bamboo tree. You plant the seed, you water it, you nurture it, and for years you see nothing. But then suddenly it shoots up, growing rapidly.
And that's because all that work was happening underground, even when you couldn't see it.
Exactly. And there's a story about a Zen student who asks his teacher, "How long will it take me to achieve enlightenment?" And the teacher replies, 10 years. The student then says, "But what if I work twice as hard?" And the teacher replies, "Then 20 years.
So it's not about rushing the results, it's about putting in the work consistently.
Precisely. And the legendary swordsman Miyamoto Musashi said, "It may seem difficult at first, but everything is difficult at first. So start now, even if it's messy, even if you don't know exactly what you're doing."
And remember, consistency is key. Showing up day after day, that's what makes the difference.
Couldn't agree more. All right, here's a big one. Your social circle. It has a huge impact on your mindset and your habits.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Jim Rohn famously said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with."
I love that quote. It's so true. We tend to adopt the habits and the mindsets of the people we're around.
So if you're surrounded by lazy people, it's going to be much harder to break free from your own laziness.
Right.
And conversely, if you're surrounded by driven, motivated people, it's going to rub off on you.
It's like osmosis.
Exactly. So take a look at your inner circle. Are these people supporting your goals, or are they holding you back?
And this doesn't just apply to laziness, it applies to all kinds of habits, good and bad.
So true. And if you need to make some changes to your social circle, do it. It might be difficult, but it's worth it. There's a quote that says, "Close the window that hurts you, no matter how beautiful the view is."
Ouch, that's a tough one, but it's true. Sometimes you have to let go of relationships that are no longer serving you.
And one last thing on this point, and this is great advice.
Yeah.
Don't take advice from people whose lives you wouldn't want to emulate.
So basically, if they don't have what you want, don't listen to what they say.
Exactly.
I love that. It's so simple, but so powerful.
Okay, moving on. This next mindset shift is about letting go of worry.
Oh man, worry is the worst.
It is, but it's often fueled by inaction.
So what's the antidote?
Action. When you're actively working towards your goals, you feel more in control, and the worry naturally starts to fade away.
It's like you're taking back your power.
And the sources recommend dividing your worries into 2 categories: those you can control and those you can't. For the things you can't control, make a plan and take action. For the things you can't control, well, worrying about them is just wasted energy.
That's a great strategy.
Mark Twain famously said, "I'm an old man and have known a great many troubles, but most of them never happened." So true, isn't it?
It is. Okay, I'm ready for the next mindset shift.
This one's a classic. Do the hard thing first.
Okay, that doesn't sound fun.
I know, but it's so effective. Our natural inclination is to put off those difficult tasks, but it just creates more stress and anxiety in the long run.
So you're saying just rip off the Band-Aid.
Exactly. And they use this great analogy: hard choices, easy life. Easy choices, hard life.
Ooh, I like that. So if you choose to do the hard thing now, it makes your life easier later on.
It makes so much sense, doesn't it? And remember, those big rewards, the ones that really matter, they almost always come from doing those hard things.
Yeah, no pain, no gain, right?
Exactly. So don't let that desire for a balanced life become an excuse to avoid the difficult tasks that are really important.
It's about pushing past those self-imposed limits.
And try picturing your future self, the one who's already reaped the rewards of your current hard work. It could be a huge motivator.
That's a great tip.
And finally, remember this quote from F.M. Alexander: "People do not decide their futures. They decide their habits, and their habits decide their futures."
So powerful. It all comes back to those small daily actions.
Okay, one more mindset shift to cover before we move on to the practical stuff. And this one's about delegation.
Delegation.
Yeah, you can't do everything yourself. If you want to achieve big things, you need to learn to delegate.
Makes sense, but it can be hard to let go of control, you know?
It is, but trust me, it's worth it. John C. Maxwell, the leadership expert, said, "If you want to do a few small things right, do them yourself. If you want to do great things and make a big impact, learn to delegate."
So it's not about being lazy, it's about being strategic.
Exactly. Identify those tasks that are eating up your time but aren't really moving the needle.
Like all that admin stuff.
Exactly. Make a list of those tasks and see if you can delegate them to someone else.
And you might even find that someone else can do them better and faster than you can.
So true. It's all about playing to your strength.
And freeing up your time and energy for the things that really matter.
Okay, let's move on to the last point in this section, which is about learning.
Learning. I thought we were talking about productivity.
We are, but learning is a huge part of personal growth and development.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
The sources emphasize learning things that will actually improve your life, not just learning for the sake of learning.
So it's about being intentional, right?
Exactly. And they talk about the importance of active learning, really engaging with the material and thinking critically about it.
So not just passively absorbing information.
Exactly. And there's a quote from Naval Ravikant on speed reading that says, if you can speed read it, it isn't worth reading.
Oh, wow. I've never thought about it that way.
It's a good reminder to focus on the quality of what you're reading, not just the quantity.
And to read a variety of things.
Absolutely. Fiction, nonfiction, self-help, history, philosophy, biographies, you name it.
It's about expanding your horizons and gaining new perspectives.
All right, now that we've covered the mindset shifts, let's dive into the practical stuff. This is where we get into those actionable tips and techniques.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, so the sources start with a list of 20 productivity tips. These are things that you can implement right away.
Give me the highlights.
So there's planning your day in advance, setting clear goals, applying the 80-20 rule.
Okay, I'm familiar with that one.
Then there's eliminating multitasking, which we already talked about. Focusing deeply on one task at a time, removing distractions, taking naps when you're tired.
Naps are my love language.
Mine too. And then there's saying no to non-essential requests, delegating tasks, having a do-it-now attitude.
So no procrastination.
Exactly. Then there's tackling any task that takes less than 5 minutes immediately.
I can do that.
Then there's prioritizing the hardest task first each day, setting deadlines, not getting bogged down in irrelevant details, and letting go of unnecessary perfectionism.
Okay, so basically working smarter, not harder.
Exactly. And then there's scheduling specific times for emails, avoiding unnecessary meetings.
Ooh, yeah, I need to work on that one.
We all do. And then there's avoiding negative people and doing work that you genuinely enjoy.
So it all comes back to mindset.
It does. And 2 of those tips are worth diving a bit deeper into. First up is the 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle.
Remind me how that one works again.
Basically, it says that 20% of your efforts will produce 80% of your results. So it's about focusing on those high-impact tasks that will give you the biggest bang for your buck.
So it's about prioritizing ruthlessly.
Exactly. And the second one is Parkinson's law, which states that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion. So if you give yourself a week to do something, it will take you a week. But if you give yourself a day, you'll find a way to get it done in a day.
So it's all about setting tight deadlines.
Precisely. Now let's get into some more specific techniques. And this is a fun one, 8 Japanese techniques for overcoming laziness.
Ooh, this sounds interesting.
So the first one is Ikigai, which is all about finding your purpose in life. It's about doing work that you love, that you're good at, that the world needs, and that you can be paid for.
Wow, that's a high bar.
It is, but it's something to strive for.
What's the next one?
It's Kaizen, which is the philosophy of continuous improvement. It's about making small, incremental improvements every single day.
So it's about those little 1% gains that add up over time.
Exactly. And then there's Shoshin, which is about approaching things with a beginner's mind. You know, like a child who's seeing something for the first time.
It's about being open to new ideas and new possibilities.
Exactly. And there's a great quote from the Zen master Shinryu Suzuki that says, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few."
I love that. Okay, what else do we have?
There's Hara Hachibu, which is a mindful eating practice. It's about eating until you're 80% full.
So it's about listening to your body and not overeating.
Exactly. And it can help you avoid that post-meal slump that can kill your productivity.
So true. What's next?
The next one is Shinrin-yoku, which translates to forest bathing. It's the practice of spending time in nature.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. It's supposed to be really good for stress reduction.
It is. And then there's wabi-sabi, which is a philosophy that finds beauty in imperfection and impermanence.
So it's about embracing the imperfections of life.
Exactly. And then there's Ganbaru, which is about perseverance and putting in your best effort.
So it's about not giving up, even when things get tough.
Exactly. And finally, there's Gammon, which is about patience and endurance. It's about accepting the things you can't change and finding the strength to keep going.
Wow, those are some powerful techniques.
They are. Okay, let's move on to some other practical tips. One of the sources recommends doing this 10-minute exercise before you go to sleep.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Take 10 minutes to write down your accomplishments from the day and any times you felt you wasted time.
It's like a daily debrief.
It is. It helps you become more aware of your habits, and then take a few minutes to make a to-do list for the next day.
So you start each day with a clear plan.
Exactly. And speaking of to-do lists, another tip is to focus on just 3 key tasks each day.
3. That doesn't seem like much.
It's not about quantity, it's about quality. Choose those 3 high-impact tasks that will make the biggest difference.
So it's about focusing on the vital few.
Exactly. Okay, next up are 10 tiny habits that can change your life.
Okay, I'm all about tiny habits. They're so much easier to implement.
Right. So here they are. Move your body regularly, eat healthy, have a strong sense of purpose, drink more water, surround yourself with loved ones, take risks, don't overload yourself, avoid multitasking, eliminate distractions, and have a sense of urgency.
Wow, that's a great list. It covers all the bases.
It does. And if you can implement even a few of those consistently, it will make a huge difference in your life.
I agree. Okay, what else do we have?
The next one is the Pomodoro technique, which is a time management method that involves working in 25-minute intervals with short breaks in between.
I've heard of that. It's supposed to be really good for focusing.
It is. And you can adjust the intervals to suit your needs.
And it helps prevent burnout by making sure you take breaks.
Exactly. And then there's the 5-minute rule, which is super simple. If any task takes less than 5 minutes, do it immediately.
So no procrastinating on those little things.
Precisely. And it prevents those little tasks from piling up and feeling overwhelming.
I like it.
And finally, there's the 2-day rule, which is all about consistency. Basically, don't let yourself miss a beneficial habit for 2 days in a row.
So if you miss a workout one day, make sure you get back on track the next day.
Exactly. It helps you stay consistent and avoid falling off the wagon.
These are all great tips. I'm feeling so much more motivated already.
Me too. And the sources end with this powerful call to action. Wake up. It's a reminder that time is precious, and we need to make the most of it.
It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget about the bigger picture.
Yeah, and they quote Marcus Aurelius, who said, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love."
That's beautiful.
And they encourage us to live in the present moment and to stop worrying about what other people think.
So it's about being true to ourselves and pursuing our own path.
And the final message is, time is running out. Start living.
So no more excuses.
No more excuses.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the message is pretty clear. If you want to overcome laziness and achieve your goals, it all comes down to taking responsibility, focusing on the right things, and developing the right habits and mindset.
And remember, it's not about being perfect.